everyone and welcome to the channel. Today on Midder Masterpiece, we're going to be tackling one of anime's most unforgettable shows and deciding if it is indeed brilliant or maybe it's a bit too ambitious. So today, we're going to be looking at ReZero Season 1 and 2.
So, okay?
Okay.
Without further ado, let's ride into the categories for this series. We've got the beginning, we've got the characters, we've got the story, we've got world building, which I believe is a little bit more warranted here than originality and creativity, although we could take into that category as well. I just believe ReZero is big enough to warrant a world building category. And of course we have ending. So, without further ado, let's glide right on into the beginning and talk about the fruit salad that every great anime needs. You have to have, is the main character interesting? The premise and the hook, right? As for the premise and the hook, you got me, because we're going to talk about Subaru for a second. He's just a regular guy. He's sucked into a fantasy world, as we all do on Saturday nights in front of the 7-Eleven, right? But unlike the heroes like Ainz, Rimuru, there are more out there with overpowered abilities that just kind of clap anything they come into contact with, and you question if there even are stakes in a series with somebody as overpowered as they are. Subaru is not overpowered. Although he does get the ability to die and come back, and die and come back, which you would think would get rid of the tension of the series, but it only adds to it, because Return by Death, as he likes to call it, which I still think sounds like a lame name. I do not understand why. I guess maybe it's because he thinks it's cool, but it's supposed to be lame, because it kind of is. He just gets to relive his worst moments on repeat every single time he dies, and you would think, oh man, maybe he gets used to it. I don't think you can get used to dying. I feel like that's probably a life-altering moment, and Subaru gets that like 50 times every day. So I will give you guys a fun fact here. ReZero uses the isekai trope to subvert a typical hero's journey, making survival more of a reward than a given, because most of the time in all of these series you're kind of looking at the progression of them where they started out kind of level 1-ish and then kind of as they get to like level 100, right? Think something like Solo Leveling, right? Solo Leveling is a great example, though it's not an isekai, but it follows a similar premise of that. So you're kind of given the fact that they will most likely survive, whereas ReZero, it's not a given that Subaru is going to survive. I mean, technically he'll still be alive at the end of it, but he will die. So making that level go up a little bit is pretty hard, pretty stunted, some would say. So overall, I think it's like New Game Plus, but every save point is the worst checkpoint you could possibly imagine. The level 99 boss is just camping your spawn, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that is essentially how I would sum up ReZero. So I think it gets all 3 points. I think Subaru is a wonderfully interesting character. Now, talking about characters, let's get right on into it. So, Subaru is a flawed protagonist. Like you, like me, he's not perfect. And he's not meant to be. It's intentional. Instead of power, he learns from resilience the hard way, making him relatable and painfully human. To the point where sometimes you're like, man, I understand you've had a bad day and you're kind of exploding on Amelia right now, but like, God, you can't really get a good loop if you do that. And then the save point happens right after he explodes on Amelia in the first season. If anybody else remembers that moment, that was maybe the best gut punch from season 1 I have ever heard. Because you have all these great moments where like he progresses her relationship and they get closer and then he dies and it's all reset and you feel like, God, every dating sim save file ever. But then he actually like does the worst possible choice. And then the game say, I swear, they're just out to get him. They're out to get my boy, and it's so tragic for him. So, I think overall, a wonderfully great character, and a representation of what the ability of Return by Death would do to an actual regular person. Which I believe is what Subaru is mainly supposed to represent, as a regular guy. He's not really anything too special. He simps a lot, and to be honest, can we blame him? So, without further ado, I would give him the 2 out of 2 points for main character. We're going to get on into the side characters here, and then I'm going to talk about villains. Ooh, mixing it up. So, for the side characters, I'm mainly going to talk about, like, Amelia, Rim, Beatrice. You got Amelia, the noble love interest. Subaru's main reason to keep going. If he was not simping for her, I think he would have given up a long time ago. And she's perfect. little too perfect, if you know what I'm saying. But I've heard they've fixed that problem in season 3. But my main thing with Amelia, which I do believe she's the best love interest, first off. I'm not in Rim Camp like an absolute animal, okay? But Amelia's whole thing and the character growth in season 2 felt like... God, it felt like Subaru was babysitting her. Who else thought Subaru was babysitting Amelia? God, like she was having a mental breakdown. And I mean, I get it. It was very rough. She had to deal with her past, which I think she got amnesia about or something. But my God, if my boy Subaru has not been dealing with the worst mental stress ever the entire time through seasons 1 and 2. So that's my little Amelia rant, but I've heard she gets way better in season 3, so maybe I'll change around on her. As for Rim, I think we all need to take a second and just think about what Rim did. 1, she killed Subaru for like a bajillion times in the mansion, like reset point, and then like for some reason he just forgets about it. Like, am I the only one who thought he just forgot about the fact that she killed him so many times? Like, I mean, my God. And then she, like, is like, I loved you the whole time, Subaru. And the ultimate rejection, which anybody who's in Rim Camp, I feel for you. That is tragic. But at the same time, I mean, let's both be honest. Is she best girl? No. So I think we just need to stop kidding ourselves. And also the fact that she was sidelined the entire season 2. I popped off. I know all Rim fans didn't, but I popped off and I was having a great time with it. But overall, I think she's a great character. We developed Rom a lot in the second season, which is my favorite out of the 2. I believe Rom has a little bit more of a personality, just overall funny. And I think the interesting love triangle between Rom, Roswaal, and like Echidna is just fascinating to me. Also, the whole Roswaal is like living in his ancestors' body moments. It's crazy too, but overall, like Rom as well. Beatrice, I think she's great. I do think she gets a little bit annoying at times, like in season 2, where you're just like, Beatrice, like Subaru's just trying to help you. Like, could we just like talk to him for like maybe a millisecond and then we would resolve all of our problems? But she doesn't want to, which granted, I mean, she has gotten essentially betrayed for hundreds of years by Echidna, which is not a great moment, but overall I thought she did a great job. I love how she's kind of like Subaru's teacher slash familiar, which is an interesting way to kind of flip the relationship a little. Love it. I love Garfield. I think he's a wonderful character, and I hope he continues to do stuff in season 3, which I did see him in the trailer, so I'm very excited. So I think each of these characters within the side characters category, wonderfully well done. They are thoroughly developed, which is kind of surprising for as large of a cast as ReZero has for a lot of their side characters to be developed in a meaningful way with the audience. Loved it. 100%. I will give the side characters 2 out of 2. Now let's get into the villains and antagonists, boys. Let's get why we were here. All right, so we got Betelgeuse, okay? Witch Cult MVP, most valuable player. He's out there putting in work, despite him killing his lover kind of in season 2, and then he like downward spirals, but he's put in the work for the home team. And his twisted obsession and iconic laugh turned the dial from scary to unforgettable. Who else like remembers the scene where it's Subaru chained to the wall and it's Betelgeuse there and like Subaru is kind of going through it as he usually does, and then Betelgeuse is like giving him the whole "you're faking being insane" speech because he's like, a real insane person would not care about the thought of others. And yet, you do. So quit faking it. And just talk to me. And I love that whole, like, interaction they have, where also he licks his eye, which is a little, whoa, first off. That made me feel very gross. Because, you ever have one of those things in a series where they do something and then you feel that? Another one is, like, the Arcane, it's Silco whenever he, like, pricks his eye, right? I felt the licking of the eye, and it scarred me for life. So, I think Betelgeuse's character is inspired by the themes of psychological horror, making him a literal and figurative monster, as you can pretty much see how he literally turns into a monster at the end of season 1, and he kind of just, like, tries to go after the wagon. But also, he is a very tragic character due to what we know about him in season 2. The whole why he screams love all the time is very tragic, and I thoroughly enjoy him for that. I'm sorry that it happened to him, but at the same time, a very deep character for as shallow as he seemed in season 1, which shallow isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as they have the personality to pull it off, which Betelgeuse definitely had the personality to pull it off. So, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Betelgeuse, and I would love to see more of him. Now, as for anybody who is wondering why I am not mentoring a certain character, we're going to glide right in onto story, and then I'm going to talk about the single greatest point of ReZero, which is the Roswaal reveals himself to be the mastermind moment. So, I'm going to go ahead and get into it. I think that when he reveals himself to Subaru and says, oh, it was me the whole time, like in Season 1, first off, the layers that got added to Season 1, mind-blowing. And second, just the level of despair and sadness on Subaru's face when he realizes who did it to him. God, it was crazy. It was like the biggest like pop-off moment for me when I was watching it as it was coming out. I was like, there's no shot. There's no shot it was Roswaal, and it was. It's a mind-blowing moment. So, I think overall he's always been kind of shrouded in mystery, but this revelation turns his character from kind of a supportive side character into main antagonist, and my god, does it like bump him up the levels of importance in the series like that. Like, he is immediately from, he's the funny clown guy who you could remember and you could also forget, but he is now main antagonist of season 2, and you're like, whoa. Just not ready for that, but my god, did they make this character impactful. And I think overall, the best part about them and this reveal is that they are essentially the same person, but one thing is different. And the difference is that Subaru is not willing to sacrifice others to get what he wants. Roswaal is willing to sacrifice everything to get what he wants, which is a very interesting way to kind of dissect the two, as they are essentially just foils of each other, because you see through the Echidna backstory that Roswaal was simping for Echidna, much like Subaru be simping for Amelia. Everybody is a simp in this series, one way or the other, and I am here for it. But I will say, overall, I think that is the best part of ReZero, is the Roswaal versus Subaru conflict, which if you have not yet seen it and you are still in this episode, take a gander. Watch that moment. It's wonderful. So, as for the rest of the story, I think the show takes the reset concept that could have been gimmicky and a little bit meh, and turns it into a tool for character growth and high stakes tension, right? Because every time he dies, you don't see him respawn. You see him go through a spiral of despair, and also he lost all of his progress, which to anybody who has accidentally deleted their save file in a game, I think you can understand how that feels. Although we do have autosave now in a lot of games, so you're not really ever going to lose too much now, but Subaru's playing on hard mode. There is no autosave. I mean, there is, but the autosave is working against him, and that is just tragic. I guess if there was manual saves, he'd be doing it every, like, 5 seconds, right? So, imagine autosave, but it screws you over, and that's what Subaru has. Okay, also, I think another important part to touch on in the story for this series is the philosophical element that it has, which return by death, or, save file, whatever you want to call it, isn't about just respawning. It kind of highlights a theme of fate versus free will, where Subaru is thrust into situations where if he makes one mistake, he essentially dies, right? And he is kind of fated into these situations through maybe Roswaal or some other force, and yet he has to use his free will to narrowly avoid just dying all the time. And that is how he pushes forward and creates a new save file, right? So, I think overall it is a very interesting way to kind of tackle that concept, and makes the series truly unique in the isekai genre, because there are a lot of isekais that are kind of like cookie-cutter shows, and you don't really get a lot of depth, emotional depth at least, within the series as a whole, where I think ReZero has a lot of emotional depth to its characters and plot as a whole. So I think the story overall deserves the wonderful 5 out of 5 for the story category. Now, as for world building, I will say this. ReZero's world building, rich, and yes, terrifying. It is very terrifying. Every faction, from the royal selection to the witches cult, includes a depth of history, magic, political intrigue, But also, they probably want to kill you for the most part, right? Like, if you just make them mad, which Subaru seems great at doing, or just making them an enemy of him for absolutely no reason, he will probably get cooked. And that is just the sad fact of being Subaru in this world, where everybody wants to end your life for no reason. So, I think the world building overall is well done. I thoroughly enjoyed learning about the witches cult. I thoroughly enjoyed learning the actual witches. I was really surprised that they just popped into existence in Season 2. I was like, wow, I did not think we would meet all of you at the same time, for the most part. Definitely not all together, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think Roswell definitely adds a depth into the world-building category as you kind of find out that maybe some people are orchestrating certain situations, and it could just not be Roswell. Also, it could be other people as well, like the one witch, I never remember her name. She's with the Bishop of Greed in the flashback. She could be orchestrating a lot. She seems dangerous. And overall, I really enjoyed the world building. I also enjoyed kind of like the depth into magic. I mean, every isekai has their like magic system, right? But this one seemed interesting because one, Subaru wasn't even great at it off the start. And two, his magic is not as overpowered as other things would seem. But when he got the magic, I legitimately popped off. It was like, so, here, I'll use the book, because everybody loves it when I use the book, right? So, to put it into perspective, you have kind of like, here's the bar that a regular, like, we'll call this regular. And this is where, like, a normal isekai protagonist would be with their magic just off spot, right? This is, like, god tier levels, like, they're already in-game boss. Subaru literally started here, and then he got something that made him like this. Like, this is where Subaru is now, where, like, basically anybody can still solo this man and it not be that hard. But literally, this progress made me pop off more than, like, the overpowered man just breaking the ceiling, right? And just going, like, past fully beyond. So, I do kind of like the rewards of progression in this series. I believe they are actually substantial, whereas I believe a lot of other series kind of cheat their way through the power system that they make up in one way or another. So, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the world building. I really liked it, and I'd love to see more of it. I will say it's not, like, super expansive, and that's probably why I'm only going to give it a 3 out of 4, because overall, I believe that there are series that do the world-building category better, but I also don't believe that ReZero is really focusing on world-building, to be honest. It's kind of like a secondary fact. They're more of a character-driven series overall. So, the ending category. Season 2 wraps up with major character arcs for Subaru, Amelia, Garfield even, too. I love the Garfield arc. Rom has one. Roswell has one. There's great character arcs all around, to be honest. And so, I believe that it does a great job at progressing the characters and answering questions we have from Season 1, but not all of the questions, because you gotta let them stew a little bit, right, for Season 3, as we all know. So it's very refreshing to have a series kind of put its characters first, and then focus on the plot elements, rather than the other way around, which I think is great overall. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So I will give the ending a wonderful 3 out of 3. Oh, actually, also, bonus point alert, bonus point alert. Oh my god. Everybody's so surprised that I would give out another bonus point. And the reason I'm giving a bonus point here is because I believe that ReZero, overall, is one of the few good isekai shows out there, which there are many. And so, for something to actually be interesting within its genre and kind of put a new spin on it, and to be as impactful as ReZero is, with its characters and its deep emotional writing, I believe it deserves a bonus point. If anybody doesn't think so, well, joke's on you, I run this show, so you got! I'm giving ReZero a wonderful 20 out of 20, and I believe it deserves every point on this list. And the only problem I really have with it is world building, which, I mean, I'm sure I'll get more of later. It's just the first 2 seasons were essentially just focused on character stuff, right? So, it is what it is. So, ReZero. Is it mid, or is it a masterpiece? The storytelling's dark, the world is brutal, and the themes hit hard. It might be a masterpiece, but only if you're ready for a true emotional workout. So, I will give it masterpiece for those of you with emotional armor and who are ready to brave through a fight of depression and trauma. And mid for those just want a lighthearted fantasy and don't really want to think too much. So, overall, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment down below for what I should pick for next week's mid or masterpiece in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next one. Adios. Congratulations! You've made it to the end of another amazing video of mine. As for what series I'm covering next week, the top icon is it. And as for the bottom one, it is the video YouTube thinks you should listen to next because my peak opinions deserve to be heard. And I will see you guys in the next one. Adios.